Can you all hear at the back? Right. Before I introduce our next speaker, we've got George Osborne, one of the two famous now freedom riders, maybe infamous freedom riders. I'd like just to, we've got a number of messages that have been sent through from people who were unable to be here today that they wanted read out. This is a message from Lawrence J. Hanley, who's the international president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, which is the union operating in the United States and Canada, who also have been watching what we've been doing here in South Yorkshire, and have sent this message. On behalf of the 190,000 members of the Amalgamated Transit Union throughout North America, I would like to express our solidarity and heartfelt congratulations as you celebrate the victory won by your Freedom Riders campaign in South Yorkshire. ATU knows well that victories like these can only be achieved when people, transit workers, riders and advocates who care about and support the same cause come together to fight for what they believe in. Over the last few years, ATU and our locals have been engaged in similar successful campaigns across North America to mobilise and join with riders and transit advocates to fight for better, safer and more reliable public transit for all. We applaud you for your efforts as you stood united, even as two of your supposed ringleaders were arrested and charged. Your determination and commitment in the face of serious opposition sent them a loud and clear message that their tactics will not work against a unified force. You've made real change in your community, and we urge you to stand strong in your fight going forward. Congratulations again on your victory, and please know the Amalgamated Transit Union stands with you. And I'd like to thank Martha Mayer, who will be speaking later, who's the president of the secretary of Sheffield Trades Council, who is responsible for getting these kind of international links through to our campaign. Anyway, our next speaker is George.
I'm tempted to start off by saying free, free, free at last. It's not just the fact that Tony and I have had the charges removed, but as far as I'm concerned, this is yet another victory, another stamp in favour of the Freedom Ride campaign. We had a victory when we got the free train travel reinstated for the disabled. This is our second victory now that the charges have been dropped. And we need to give ourselves a cheer, because it's all of us that have done that. All of you taking part in the campaigns and giving support. So let's have a big cheer for ourselves. And I can sum up the reason for our victory in two phrases. One is the Freedom Riders United, and the other is the trade union movement. And the fact that we've actually related both of those together. The Freedom Rides would have been a magnificent campaign on its own. The trade unions do a great job. But when we come together, ordinary people that don't have work anymore, but have the bit between their teeth and want to fight, link up with trade unions that have got the economic power to make changes, then we benefit each other. And so we should be proud of the fact that we've had support from ASLEF, as we've already heard from Tosh, from Unite the Union, particularly the Unite Community section, and Joe Rolling, that we should cheer all of that union support. We've had support from unions around the country. Donations have come through on a regular basis. So that's absolutely magnificent. But I'm here happy today that I'm not facing the charges. 8 weeks ago, I spoke with my solicitor, who said, George, I'm going to be frank with you. I'll put forward all the defence that you've told me. But you're guilty. On both the charges, you're guilty. You're going to get found and you're going to be sentenced. And you face up to 1 month imprisonment, a large fine, and the prosecution will want tens of thousands of pounds expenses. So when I got an email last week when I was in New Zealand saying that the charges have been dropped, suddenly the holiday became a happy holiday. So that's great news. But actually, my feeling at this moment isn't one of happiness, it's one of anger. Yes. Blazing anger. Yes. Because I had been looking forward to my day in court, or to be more straight about it, my 5 days in court alongside a Tony, to expose the lies and the nonsense that the British Transport Police had concocted about what happened on June the 23rd. Yeah. This, in my hands, is the evidence that they intended bringing in the court over the next 5 days. All of that against us. A massive case. I just want to tell you what they had on June the 23rd. We've not been able to work out exactly how many ticket inspectors there were, but I think there were 8 to 10 extra ticket inspectors on the platform on June the 23rd. There were 12 British Transport policemen there as well. 3 of those were from Sheffield, 2 were from Doncaster, 2 had been brought down from Leeds, and 5 had been brought across from Liverpool. They've got a private security firm called STM Security. They provided 1 revenue protection officer on the day who'd come over from Manchester. They had 5 rail response security people who'd been brought down from Shipley, 3 of them wearing body cams to film what was going on. They brought down 1 senior revenue inspector from Leeds Bradford, another senior revenue inspector from Manchester, and they had that great old friend of the Freedom Riders, Paul Brown, who has that misleading title of the Customer Service Delivery Manager. Well, he's not delivered us much service, has he? No. All of those 21 people there, along with extra ticket collectors, to deal with 50 elderly and disabled people on June the 23rd. That was their idea of a proportionate response to our civil rights demonstration, our normal peaceful protests. And I wanted to have a chance to show the video of what actually went on in court on that day. We've got videos showing how the police piled in, knocking one of the partially sighted women over the top of Mark in his wheelchair here, so that they both had to go to accident and emergency in Barnsley after the demonstration was over. Why did they drop the charges? My solicitor said that I was guilty. So why did they drop the charges? No. I think they realised that the publicity that they would get would have been much worse for them than the benefit of having 1 or 2 what they called ringleaders sent down. They planned June the 23rd. We have evidence that 2 hours before we assembled in Barnsley, the Transport Police in Barnsley were talking among themselves, saying, we're going to nail them today. We're going to arrest some of them. We're going to put them in cuffs. We're going to throw them in the van. We're going to show them. This was a carefully premeditated political act on the part of Northern Transport to try and break elderly and disabled people. You know, people that have very little physical strength. They launched into us. And I just want to read you some of the things that would have come out in court.
Shame on them!
Shame! Shame!
I agree, it's a shame, yes. But actually, when you listen to what went on, perhaps they've got a point. I'll read you from the statement of a man called Moni, who is the guy that arrested me. Now, I'm not sure if, because the case is being dropped, whether I should be making these statements public. But I think that we've a right to know what they were going to say in court. And so whatever the legal situation, I'm going to read you some of the things that they were going to say.
They're all lies. They were all lies.
Well, you say that, Brian. Listen to what he says and see if they are lies. Moni says, as soon as I placed my hand on Arthur, he attempted violently to pull away from me. At this time, too, the crowd as one surged forward and I was surrounded. I have to tell you, Moni isn't a particularly tall guy. He's an average height, but he's a big man. And with all his protective equipment on, he looked even bigger. But he says, I was scared. I had an honest held belief that if I fell or was dragged to the ground, I would be seriously injured or worse. I was sweating profusely. And my mouth was dry due to fear and sweating so much. The whole protest group in my vicinity were acting like a pack of wild dogs. And in my opinion, were intent on releasing Arthur. Now, I don't think that one of our colleagues is here today, who's 80 years old, 84 actually, who on one of the videos you can see him staggering forward. Most of you know who I'm talking about. He has real mobility problems, staggering forwards and putting his arms on the shoulders of one of the police that was roughing me up. That is the kind of fearful circumstance that Moni had to put up with. An 84-year-old man hanging onto his shoulders. However, Moni did have certain considerations that he made about how to defend himself in this fearful situation. I did consider my tactical options of taser and Captor 2, which I assume is one of these sprays that they use.
Brave man.
However, oh, very brave, wasn't he? I was aware that if these items were taken from me, they could be used on me and my colleagues with potentially lethal consequences. So, young, fit Moni, tasered by one of us, if we could have got his taser off him, might have been killed. But Moni using his taser on pensioners and disabled people wouldn't have been any threat at all to their future. What a ridiculous statement. However, Moni did face some problems. I felt my right forearm and neck region being grabbed in a violent manner by a white male. A male who had a small beard and was wearing spectacles. The face of this man was contorted with sheer anger and, in my honest, hatred. The male had a large amount of foaming spittle around his mouth. He reminded me of a rabid dog. I don't quite understand the logic of the next bit, but his eyes, even though wearing spectacles, were bulging and seemed to be popping from his face. And towards the end of his justification, Moni talks about how I don't want to finger anyone when some of us are released, but this is a rabid wild dog. Moni finished up. I had on several occasions to deliver heel strikes to several separate persons that were pulling and punching me. I really feared for my own safety as the violence being displayed and the hostility towards police by this group was as violent as some of the football and English Defence League events I've policed as part of the PSU. That is the evidence that was going to be presented over 5 days, that and much more like that by the Transport Police and their ilk. They'd set aside 5 days for the case. They'd got 17 prosecution witnesses. If Tony and I had carried out the great train robbery, I think it would have been over in a quicker space of time. I'm convinced they called the case off because they didn't want all of that coming out. They're hoping that because they've called the case off, we're going to go, well, that's quits.
Empty jams.
I like that. They thought that the protests would stop. Are the protests going to stop?
No!
Are we going to turn up at the Transport Committee in Barnsley next Monday at 1 o'clock and lobby the Transport Committee to demand justice? Are we going to go from there to have a Christmas party at the YMCA in Barnsley and have a real knees up? Are we going to invite all our supporters along to both those events? And at our meeting on Friday in Barnsley, where we're planning future events, are we going to be deciding to carry on with the Freedom Rides after the New Year starts? I'm so relieved to hear that. I wasn't sure whether you were going to be convinced or not. So our strength has been our solidarity, our linking together with the unions. People have said a political attack has been made on us. We need to say to the councillors, particularly the Labour councillors that sit on the Transport Committee, it's time they found some guts. It's time they stop making cuts against pensioners. It's time they stop making cuts against the communities in Sheffield, Barnsley, Doncaster and Rotherham. It's time that they linked up with us to fight against the Tory government that's making cuts. If we just come and make room for this white car so no one gets run over.
Which way they're coming? That's what we're going to say. They're coming this way now.